champ now.
Yes, I didn't say. What are you looking so sad about, champ?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. I mean, that's not right what you just said.
What do you mean? What I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting on, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talk about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I was on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
Well, you don't know.
What's happening, my people? It's Cast Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Miss Cass, Al Booger, Crush the Legend, Azim Shabazz. Salute to everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cast Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, the Murderers Row Fighters. That's right. The highly avoided, dreaded Murderers Row Fighters. A group of black boxers that were highly avoided around the 1940s by most of the big names that competed in that era. It's reported that Mr. Pound for Pound himself, the great Sugar Ray Robinson, ducked the man on the screen there, Charles Burley. We're going to get into it today. The Murderers Row Fighters on Cast Sports, the Boxtorian. Behalf of the family today. It's Monday. We are right back at the beginning of another big week of boxing history. Got a big one coming up. Tomorrow we're going to talk about some of the best fighters that didn't make the Hall of Fame. And when you hear some of these names, the International Boxing Hall of Fame is a joke. And after tomorrow, you probably never hear me say the word again. It's a joke, man. Just wait till you hear some of the names is not in there. And Sylvester Stallone in there, a made-up movie character in the Hall of Fame. So we're going to talk about some of the top fighters that didn't make the Hall of Fame tomorrow. And then Thursday, let's go to Thursday. It's going to be boxing in the States. Friday is the profile. But another big week of boxing history coming up for you. But today, for the highlights of boxing history, we're going to talk about one of the worst judging decisions of all time. One of the absolute worst judging decisions of all time today for highlights of boxing history. Take us to 2:30. And we're going to get started on the Murderers Row Bunch. But now let's talk about the highlight of boxing history, some of the worst judging decisions of all time. We're just going to talk about this one, which is could be the worst judging decision of all time. Jersey Joe Walcott versus Joe Louis. They gave Joe Louis the win, but Jersey Joe really won the fight, and he boxed his style and outboxed Joe Louis, and they didn't give him the decision. Then they had to rematch him. Jersey Joe didn't fight the same fight because he felt he boxed his style and won the fight, but they didn't give it to him. So the rematch, he went for the knockout because he felt that was the only way he was going to get the win. After the great job he did the first time, it didn't get it, and Joe Louis got him out of there, the rematch. But yeah, that first fight could be the worst judging decision of all time. Okay, let's get into that for the highlight of boxing history for today. Okay, to start off this big week of boxing history. Again, good to see everybody again. We made it through another weekend. Everybody on this side of it. We're getting close to June. We got some big ones in June too. Some big fights coming up. So can't wait for that. But let's talk about this fight. Arguably the worst decision of all time. Okay, now the worst decision of all time, you can take your pick. Sweet Pea Whitaker openly robbed in his fights against Julio Cesar Chavez and Jose Luis Ramirez, or Timothy Bradley getting a win against Manny Pacquiao in that first fight, which absolutely no one, including Timothy Bradley's wife, believed he deserved. Right? Nobody. The only one was Timothy Bradley. His own wife said he lost. Okay? So, or Tyrone Everett, he got robbed so blatantly against Alfredo Escalera back in the 70s up there in Philly. Tyrone Everett was one of the profiles that Mike Mazzei gave. Well, that was a big robbery up there. And they even had the judge from Philly was paid off and went against Tyrone. Okay? Yeah, the judge from Philly, one from Puerto Rico, from where Escalera was from, and the referee was judging then. And so Everett's team felt the referee would be fair, and the judge from Philly would be fair. They just didn't even count on the judge from Puerto Rico. But the judge from Puerto Rico, of course, went for Escalera, and the judge from Philly even cheated Everett, man. He had to sneak out of the back door because the crowd was looking for him. He snuck out the back. But yeah, that was another one. Tyrone Everett got robbed against Alfredo Escalera about 1976, somewhere around in there. Okay. Now, that was a blatant robbery. That one. And then George Foreman was beaten to every punch, and they nonetheless gave him a win over Axel Schultz. Remember that one? Or how about James Toney getting a decision over borderline prospect Dave Tiberi? That one was so bad that this United States senator called for a federal investigation into it, right? The United States senator from Delaware, where Tiberi was from, called for a federal investigation into the fight, right? And the fight was in Atlantic City. And two of the three judges didn't even have a license to judge in Atlantic City, right? But they were willing to take that payoff, so they let them judge it. Mm-hmm. And this list could go on and on and on, but the one we're going to nominate today for the worst judging decision of all time is Joe Louis versus Jersey Joe Walcott, right? Definitely one of the all-time worst decisions in a championship fight. Okay, let's talk about that. But Jersey Joe and Joe Louis. Yeah, Jersey Joe got robbed. Okay, yeah, that's them right there. Now, Joe Louis had returned from the wars, right? And he was still champion. Okay, when he came back, he was still champion. The year was 1947, right? World War II was over, and Joe Louis had established himself as a living legend. Not only the longest reigning champion in heavyweight history, but the longest reigning world champion of any weight class in the history of boxing, right? Louis had held the title for 10 years, successfully defended it 23 times at that point, 20 by knockout, right? Still had 6 more to go. It should have ended that night against Jersey Joe, though, if the judges had got it right. Okay, but it didn't, Anyway, even as he entered the last phase of his career, he still appeared unbeatable. Perhaps the best heavyweight in boxing history. Okay? That was before Ali and Foreman and Frazier and Sonny Liston and all them. Joe Louis was probably definitely the best up to that point. 47. Okay? Now, this is Joe Louis versus Jersey Joe Walcott 1. So that was the situation with Joe Louis. Still reigning champion, 10 years, 23 straight defenses. Enter perennial contender, Jersey Joe Walcott. Now, Walcott had begun 1947 as the number 3 contender to the heavyweight crown, right? But 3 losses by the number 1 contender, Tammy Murriello, and a Walcott win over number 2 contender, Elmer Ray, left Walcott with the title shot, okay? Because the number 2 contender lost 3 straight, and Jersey Joe beat the number 2, so he got the title shot, okay? Now, no one expected journeyman Joe Walcott to win. Nobody thought he was going to beat Joe Louis. However, his role was merely to show up and become victim number 24 in the title reign of Joe Louis. That's what everybody thought, okay? This is going to be number 24. Oh, well. Mm-hmm. Ace in the building. What's up, Ace? Little highlight of boxing history right now. We're talking about the biggest upset of all time, Jersey Joe and Joe Louis, 1947. But salute, Ace. Good to see you today. All right. So, yeah, no one gave Jersey Joe Walcott a chance. He was going to be number 24 because Joe Louis had 23 straight at that point, right? Title defenses. Jersey Joe was going to be number 24, likely number 21st straight knockout. 21 knockouts in those 24 title defenses. But then, okay, Jersey Joe. Okay, let's go back. I got ahead of myself. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, everybody expected Jersey Joe to really show up and be the next victim. But a funny thing happened. Journeyman Jersey Joe had aged very well, right? He aged very well. And he became a much better fighter in his 30s, right? Than he had been in his 20s. We ran into his prime in his late 30s. Like Lennox Lewis would do 50 years later, right? Jersey Joe found his prime years in his mid-30s. Now, Joe Louis, on the other hand, was only a shadow and a distant memory of the great brown bomber he used to be, okay? So on December 5th, 1947, Jersey Joe Walcott should have become heavyweight champion of the world. The crowd at Madison Square Garden almost witnessed one of the great upsets in sports history. From the opening bell in round one, everybody could see that Joe Louis was either sadly diminished, uninspired, probably both, little both, while Walcott appeared to be better than expected and ready to become heavyweight champion on that night, right? Now, Joe Louis came in focused on the early knockout. He walked right into a counter straight right in the very first round. And to everyone's shock, Joe Louis went down. And nearly Jersey Joe almost took him out in the first round. It didn't happen again in the fourth round, as Jersey Joe seemed to not only be beating Joe to the punch, but beating him up, right? The crowd was shocked. Jersey Joe was beating Joe Louis up, man. Define Arnie One in the building. What's up, Define Arnie One? Okay, we're getting that little highlight of boxing history today. It's the Jersey Joe Walcott versus Joe Louis, 1947. This is one where the judges robbed Jersey Joe. He won that fight. But, you know, they gave it to Joe Louis. Okay, but salute Define Arnie One. Let's go on. Yeah, Jersey Joe was beating him to the punch, and he was beating Joe, the great Brown Bomber, up, right? So, then Jersey Joe Walcott made one of the worst mistakes in boxing history, right? He felt by the 12th round that with those two knockdowns and the boxing lesson he had given Joe Louis throughout the fight, right? He thought he had the fight in the bag. And he listened to his corner, which told him to box and move the last 3 rounds and take no chances on a last-minute knockout by the Brown Bomber. Because Joe Louis was desperately stalking Jersey Joe, because Joe Louis in his corner knew he was way behind, and they knew he needed the knockout. Everybody in Madison Square Garden knew Joe Louis needed a knockout except for the 3 judges. They didn't know it. Or those envelopes they got on the side told them he didn't need a knockout. You know how y'all know boxing. But anyway, Jersey Joe's corner told him to stay outside and box the last 3 rounds, and that cost him. Took his foot off the gas, right? So Walcott used superior footwork and a stinging jab and stayed away from Joe Louis 13, 14, and 15. 15 rounds back then, 47. Jersey Joe stayed away 13, 14, and 15, boxed from the outside. But even with Joe Louis winning the final 3 rounds on the basis just of being the aggressor, to the eyes of everyone in the garden that night, Jersey Joe clearly had enough of a lead that he didn't even need any of those last 3 rounds, right? Except for the 3 judges. It was clear to everybody else in the garden, except for the judges. So once the scorecards were read, with referee Ruby Goldstein voting for Walcott, even the referee gave it to Jersey Joe. Who knows better than the referee? They had 2 judges and a referee. The referee gave it to Jersey Joe Walcott, right? The judges, Frank Forbes and Marty Monroe, unbelievably gave the fight to Joe Louis. The crowd erupted in an astonished roar of rage, right? And the winner and still champion, Joe Louis, did not even raise his arms in triumph, but instead made his way to Jersey Joe Walcott and apologized to him. Apologized for the judges. Joe Louis went to Jersey Joe Walcott corner and said, "I'm sorry, Joe," because he knew he had lost, right? Louis acknowledged the rest of his life that he should have lost the title that night. That's a class act there. How many fighters today will do that? Lose every round and then get the win and swear they won the fight. But Joe Louis admitted from that night on to the rest of his life that he lost it. You know, that he lost the fight. Admitted it. Okay? So, anyway, they had a rematch. Now, they had a rematch. Later, when asked about Goldstein's score for Walcott, the referee, Joe Louis was asked by the media about the judges giving it to him and the referee giving it to Walcott. Joe could have done the expected, mocked the usual platitudes about it being a close fight, or that Walcott ran too much. But instead, Joe said just about the most classiest comment ever made under such circumstances. Joe said, "I know Ruby Goldstein, the referee," said the Brown Bomber. "He calls him like he sees him." And the referee gave it to Walcott. And like I said, Joe Louis acknowledged that he lost that fight for the rest of his life. Never once said that he should deserve it, but he got the win, but he never once said he deserved it. Now, what does that mean? Joe was asked. Joe Louis said Ruby saw it and he called it for Walcott. And that was the end of it. You know, Joe Louis just said, I don't have to say no more about it, you know. The referee saw the fight and he gave it to Joe Walcott. But the two judges gave it to Joe Louis. Anyway, Joe Louis gave Jersey Joe a rematch, right? He won the rematch and retired with a sigh of relief. But he did come back, but he retired right after the rematch. Now, Joe Louis would say later, he would have retired that night, but that Walcott deserved the rematch, which Louis gave him 6 months later in June 1948. Then he retired. Class act, man. But, you know, like I said, Jersey Joe Walcott fought a completely different fight because he fought had a brilliant game. His team had a brilliant game plan in the first fight, and he carried it out to the letter and still lost. So you can't blame him for switching it up the second fight, going for the knockout. And that, you know, they played right into Joe Louis's strength, and Joe Louis knocked him out. But Jersey Joe didn't really have a choice. He boxed a beautiful fight the first time. They didn't give it to him, so why come out and do that again and get robbed again? So he did the only thing he could do. He came in and went for the knockout and got stopped. But anyway, yeah, he fought Louis completely different in the rematch, right? The dispirited Walcott was convinced he would have to knock Louis out to win. He couldn't help but think that. He did not use his jab to chop Louis up this time, and he did not use his footwork to control distance as he had in the first fight so brilliantly. But he believed he had to slug it out because knocking Louis out would be the only way that he would be given the title. And he was right, man. He was right. And anyway, Walcott, fighting in a style he had never used before, was caught by Joe Louis in the 11th round and was knocked out, okay? Now, had he fought the way he did the first fight, controlling distance with a rapier jab and great footwork, countering Louis's power shots with faster, crisper counters, he would have got robbed again, right? Just what he did the first time. Joe Louis was on that big, historic winning streak. Nobody was getting a decision against Joe Louis. You could have had a shutout. He still wasn't getting a decision. That was proof of it right there. Now, Joe Louis heaved an enormous sigh of relief and retired after the fight, but because of the IRS issues he had with his taxes, forced him to come out of retirement. But that's a story for another. Highlights of boxing history right there, right? And Jersey Joe finally did become champion, though. He finally became heavyweight champion of the world at age 37 with the 7th round knockout of Ezzard Charles on July 18th, 1951. It was Jersey Joe's 5th attempt at the title, right? No one was happier for Walcott than guess who? Joe Louis, who felt that at last he could stop feeling bad for robbing Walcott 4 years earlier. Yeah, Joe Louis took that to his grave if Jersey Joe had never won a title, so Joe Louis breathed a big sigh of relief. But anyway, Jersey Joe defended the title twice before facing rising star Rocky Marciano on September 23rd, 1952, and losing the title forever in a battle for the ages. The 38-year-old champion beat Rocky to the punch and evaded his rushes with superior footwork for 13 rounds. And he gave Rocky the first knockdown of his career in the very first round. But unfortunately, the fight lasted 15, not 13. And Jersey Joe simply could not avoid Susie Q for 15 rounds. And Rocky caught him in the 13th round with that right hand, one of the most vicious knockouts in boxing history. In fact, Walcott would fight only one more fight after that fight. That was a rematch with Rocky on May 15th, 1953. And this time he got knocked out in the first round, right? And the tale of that fight and the rumor 67 years old that Walcott went down at the first shot from Rocky is a tale for another highlights of boxing history. They said Jersey Joe took a dive, but hey, that's another Highlights of Boxing History show. Okay, let's get into it. BVO Boxing, BVO Sports TV in the building from the Sports Talk Network. We got another Sports Talk Network guy in here too, Crush the Legend. Crush the Legend is 6 a.m. Monday through Friday, and BVO is 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. Two great podcasts. Check them out, man. I promise you, you won't regret it. BVO Sports TV, hashtag STN. What's up, BVO? Okay, we're going to talk about the Murderers Row fighters today. Okay. Like I said, a group of black boxers that fought around the 1940s were highly avoided by many of the big names that competed in that era. And like I said, it's rumored that now Charles Burley was thought to be the best of the group, and it's rumored he was dodged by Mr. Pound for Pound himself, the great Sugar Ray Robinson. They said Sugar Ray Robinson manager was against the fight, but you can't blame the manager, like I said Friday. Sugar Ray is the fighter. Tell your manager, make the fight. That's what Floyd Patterson did. Cus D'Amato kept Floyd away from Sonny Liston for a few years. But Floyd Patterson finally told Cus, look, make this fight. I want to fight this man. Now, he got knocked out in the first round back-to-back, but he did. You got to give him his props. He did take the fight, So Sugar Ray could have done that, but he never did. So don't put it on the manager, Sugar Ray. You didn't want no part of Charles Burley. If you're scared, say you're scared. No, Sugar Ray wasn't scared. He just didn't want to lose his title. Okay, let's go with the Murderers Row. But how's everybody today, man? We're right back at the beginning of another big week of boxing history. Only other thing I know is tomorrow is going to be some of the best fighters that's not in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, man. And wait till you see this. I got to tell y'all one. I was absolutely shocked. I found out over the weekend Esteban de Jesus is not in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I was pissed off. Hey, what the hell is Sylvester Stallone doing there? Esteban de Jesus not in there, man. The International Boxing Hall of Fame is a joke. And after I talk about these fighters, it's not deserved to be, and it's not in the moment. I'm never going to talk about the International Boxing Hall of Fame again. It's an absolute total joke, man. Sylvester Stallone in there, and Esteban de Jesus not in there. Esteban de Jesus, legendary, the only man to beat Roberto Duran in the 70s. He should be in there just off of that, right? Roberto Duran was 54-1 in the 70s. That one was Esteban de Jesus. He should be in the Hall of Fame just off of that. And he did much more than that. One of the best lightweights of the 1970s. But I had to go in the bathroom and wash my lens off of my glasses and come back and look again to make sure I saw that right. Esteban Jesus is on the list for not being in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And tune in tomorrow. I got a few more that y'all going to be shocked about. And right now, y'all thinking that a few of these people is in there? No, I couldn't believe it. But let's get on with the. Y'all believe that Esteban de Jesus not in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, man? And I guess he won't get in there because he retired like 50 years ago. 40, 50 years ago. So he hasn't got in all this time. Esteban can hang it up. Probably not even on the ballot anymore. That's crazy. But the Murderers Row fighters. Can you believe that, Define Arnie? Esteban de Jesus not in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Oh, today is Malcolm X's birthday. Happy birthday, Malcolm X. Appreciate you, BBO. BBO said he was afraid like Rocky. Yep, Define Arnie one. That's the one that beat Roberto. That's crazy. That's crazy. And he won't get in there because he retired like 40 years ago. I mean, he's not even on the ballot. I know you don't stay on there no 40 years, right? So, man, that's crazy. But, life ain't perfect. But Esteban de Jesus should be in the Hall of Fame. Sylvester Stallone in there. Turkey Alley Sheik is in the Hall of Fame. The whole International Boxing Hall of Fame is a total absolute joke, man. I'm going to do this list tomorrow. You will never hear me utter the word International Boxing Hall of Fame again after tomorrow because it's a joke. It's nothing but a joke. It means absolutely nothing to be in there. Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing, man. But the Murderers Row fighters, okay? Let's talk about them. Appreciate everybody coming through today. Hope you enjoy this. Okay. I'm going to drop this down. This music comes. BBO said Rocky was scared. Who was he scared of, BBO? He was never beaten. He didn't duck nobody, BBO. I don't think. He fought all the number one contenders. Joe Louis was number one when he fought Joe. Joe was on the 8-fight winning streak. Yeah. He did retire early. I don't know what the reason for that was. Rocky retired real early. He only fought 8 years, or 8 or 9 years. I never knew the reason that Rocky retired so early, though. I'm gonna have to find that out. Anybody know? You know, BBO, why Rocky Marciano retired so early? I have to check that out. Yeah, Clubber Lang should be in there too. They fine on it if Rocky, Clubber Lang, Apollo, Creed, all of them should be in there. Me and Rocky got the same record, 0-0. 0% knockout ratio, right? Okay. The Murderers Row fighters. I'm gonna leave the Hall of Fame. We're gonna talk about it tomorrow. I got a whole group of fighters that's not in the International Boxing Hall of Fame that's very deserving, led by Esteban de Jesus. Okay. Only man to beat Roberto Duran in the 70s. That should have got him in right there. Plus, he was champion. Legendary, man. Esteban. That's crazy. One of the greatest Puerto Rican fighters of all time. Top 10. Right up there with Tito and Wilfredo Benitez. All of them, man. Carlos Ortiz. It's Carlos Ortiz, Puerto Rico or Mexico? Puerto Rico, yeah, Carlos Ortiz. Yeah. But let's get into this, man. Murderous Road Fighters. We're going to talk about the International Boxing Hall of Fame some more tomorrow, though, for sure. Did I put that up there while we was talking about that fight? I don't even think so. I believe I did. Yeah, that was the fight we just talked about. Jersey Joe won that one. Okay, the Murderous Row boxers. Okay, in the 1940s, a group of brilliant black fighters led by the fabled Charlie Burley were avoided by the boxing elite of the era. Now, this is their story, okay? Now, it is understandable that the term Murderous Row might conjure up a vision of a prison landing, right? Running around a series of cells housing condemned murderers or other extremely violent prisoners. Now, the term originated as a description of the second floor of the long since demolished Tombs Prison in New York. That's where it came from. But the phrase has also been used in a sports context, initially in baseball and then in boxing. Now, back in the late 1920s, the term Murderous Row was used to describe the batting lineup of the New York Yankees, right? Widely considered to be the greatest ever Major League Baseball team assembled, right? It featured Hall of Famers such as Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig. They was on the same team, Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. That's about 100 home runs right there between them two. Wow. Herb Pennock, Earl Coombs. Yeah, I study all history. Wade Hoyt and Tony Lazzeri. Yeah, that was supposed to have been the best baseball team ever. And the Yankees batting order was labeled Murderous Row for the way it treated opposing pitchers, right? I think the opposing pitchers probably gave it that name, the Murderous Row. And then it was originally applied to boxing by the author Bud Schauberg to describe a group of black fighters in the 1940s who were highly avoided by everybody, okay? Yeah, describe a group of black fighters in the 1940s who were feared and respected, but also dodged by the champions of the era, right? They were never awarded a title shot, not one of them. Now, the initial members listed by Schauberg in the 1940s Murderous Row were Eddie Booker, Charlie Burley, Jack Chase, Burt Lytell, and Lloyd Marshall. Was originally 6 of them. But over the years, the Coco Kid, Coleman Williams, and Aaron Wade were accepted as part of the membership of this much feared club, right? And the last 3 over the years. Okay. Okay. So now Charles Burley, the Coco Kid, Homer Williams, and Eddie Booker were viewed as those most deserving of a title shot. But Jack Chase, Lloyd Marshall, Wade, and Lytle all had legitimate claims to be given a title shot. Sports writer Jim Murray described it as the most exclusive club the ring has ever known. Okay? Most exclusive club the ring has ever known. They were so good and so feared that they had to have their own tournaments among themselves just to get fights and be able to make a living through boxing. They had to fight each other. That's how feared they were. Yeah, the Coco Kid, right? Herbert Arroyo, right? Defined on it. Herbert Arroyo, that was the Coco Kid's real name. Yeah, we're gonna get into him in a minute. Okay. Then appreciate you defining on it. Yeah. All of them deserved title shots, but they were so feared. They had to have their own tournaments just to get fights, had to fight each other. Now, if a fighter never won a world title or never even challenged for one, you would think it was highly unlikely he would find himself in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. But from this group, Booker, Burley, and Williams have all been inducted, right, into the National Boxing Hall of Fame, never even fought for a title. Now, belated recognition for boxers who were robbed of the opportunity to reap the rewards their talents so clearly deserved, right? Now, even when the champions were black, they were still shut out by white promoters, managers, or other power brokers on the basis that white versus white sold more tickets, right? And in some states, mixed race fights were banned, were illegal. And of course, they feared their fighter would lose their titles. That was the main part of it. They feared their fighters would lose, okay? Now, there were differences and similarities between the members of this exclusive club, okay? Now, Jack Chase was the oldest. He was born in January 1914, right? And 5 others were born between 1914 and 1917. And Bert Lytle was the youngest of the group. He was born in 1924. Now, each of these fighters had over 80 fights, with Eddie Booker having 81. That was the least of them all, 81 fights. Coco Kid had the most. He had 250 fights in his career. Wow, 250 fight career for the Coco Kid. Yeah, Herbert Arroyo, like Defon Arnie said, that was his real name, government name, Herbert Arroyo. Yeah, 250 fights. Now, between the 8 of them, they had a total of 1,025 fights altogether. And incredibly, only 30 were stoppages. Out of 1,025 fights combined, these guys were only stopped 30 times. Okay, combined, 8 fighters. Okay. Those stats highlight the commercial fact that in their era, you had to fight often, okay, to make any kind of living as a boxer. And to do that, you had to take whatever fight you were offered, no matter who, where, or when. And you had to have the skill and resilience to avoid any stoppages or any kind of long-term injuries, right? That might make you unavailable to fight, okay? Yeah. Okay. Now today, if a boxer had 6 or 10 fights in 1 year, it would count as a busy year, okay? Murderous road fighter Jack Chase had 24 fights in 1936, right? And that was his first year as a pro, 24 fights in his first year. And Coco Kid in 1932 and 1933 had 42 fights combined in those 2 years. And he was just 20 years old. Okay? 20 years old. 42 fighting 42 times. Now, if there had been a hierarchy in Murderous Row, Charlie Burley would have been the leader, right? The kingpin, right? And yet, the reaction by most boxing fans today when hearing Burley's name would be Charlie who? Right? Would be Charlie who? Many boxing fans today know nothing about Burley. And yet, despite never winning or even fighting for a world title, he is hailed as one of the greatest fighters of all time by his peers, okay? By fighters. The average fan don't know him, but the average fighter will tell you Charlie Burley is one of the greatest fighters of all time, okay? And we're going to talk about Charlie Burley first. Mike Rim, what's up, Mike? Mike Rim has joined us. The Murderous Row group today, Mike Rim. Okay, as promised. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about some fighters not in the Hall of Fame, and I got some surprises. Biggest surprise for me was Esteban de Jesus not in there. I'm not going to start that back up, y'all. I was pissed off when I saw that. Esteban de Jesus not in the Hall of Fame. What? Okay, anyway, yeah. Now, Archie Moore fought Charlie Burley in April 1944. Archie Moore was 29 and Charlie Burley was 28, okay? Now, that's Burley up on the screen there. Now, Moore was having his 74th fight at that time, and Burley was having his 73rd, right? And Burley was giving away 6 pounds. And both were at or near their peak at that time, right? The 73 and 74 fights. Wow, right in the middle of their prime. Now Burley knocked Moore down 4 times, right? And Moore just made it to the final bell. Now later, Archie Moore said, Charlie Burley gave me a boxing lesson. He was the best fighter I have ever fought and the best fighter I ever saw. If anyone was the perfect fighter, it was Charlie Burley. When I fought Burley, he was already a legend. Those are the words of Archie Moore. Now, Burley had outpointed his fellow Murderous Row fighter, Jack Chase, just 2 weeks before the Archie Moore fight, okay? Just 2 weeks before that. And he took the Moore fight at just 3 days' notice. Just had 3 days' notice. The International Boxing Hall of Fame trainer, the great Eddie Futch, whose career spanned 8 decades, said, Charlie Burley was the greatest all-around fighter he ever saw. And Eddie Futch trained Roberto Duran, not Eddie Futch. Eddie Futch trained Lennox Lewis, one of the Klitschko's, and he said Charlie Burley was the greatest fighter he ever saw. Okay. And when Sugar Ray Robinson was offered to fight Burley, he doubled his price demand to fight Burley. You know what that is, what they call that nowadays? Just pricing himself out of the fight, making sure the fight doesn't happen. Sugar Ray doubled what he normally gets for a fight to fight Burley, essentially just making sure the fight didn't happen, pricing himself out of the fight. That's all that was, right? Assuring the fight would never happen. That's what Sugar Ray was doing. Like I say, scared say you're scared, right, BBL? Sugar Ray was scared like Rocky. Ken Saw Love One in the building. What's up, Ken Saw Love One? Where's Jarrell at? Oh, there's Jarrell right there. I knew Jarrell was in here if Ken Saw Love One in here. So look, we talking about the Murderous Row fighters today. Y'all, good to see you. I haven't seen y'all in a while. Always good to see Ken Saw Love One and Jarrell Hattie in the building. Okay, let's continue. Yeah, Sugar Ray Robinson, when he was offered the Burley fight, doubled the price what he usually got paid That's just pricing yourself out, making sure the fight doesn't happen. That's all that was. So Sugar Ray really did duck Charlie Burley. That confirms it for me right there when he made that price demand. Now, Burley was born in Bessemer, Pennsylvania on September 6, 1917. His father was a black miner, and his mother was an Irish immigrant. Yeah, he's from a mixed race marriage. Yeah. And he was the only boy in a family of 7 children, had 6 sisters. Now, his success in the amateur ranks in 1936 qualified Burley to compete in the U.S. trials for the Berlin Olympics, but Burley refused to participate due to the Nazis' racist politics, and instead he turned pro. Now, he had his first pro fight on September 29, 1936, and he won his first 12 fights before losing to the more experienced Eddie Dolan, who would be unbeaten in his next 28 fights, right? Eddie Dolan, the one who Burley lost his fight to. Eddie Dolan went on like a 29-30 fight winning streak after he beat Burley. In 1938, Burley lost a split decision to future welterweight champion Fritzy Zivit, but he outpointed Zivit in a rematch, okay? That was before Zivit got the title, because once Zivit got the title, he wanted no part of Charles Burley. But he fought him before he got the title. Now, Burley won over the Coco Kid, a fellow Murderers Row fighter, for the colored welterweight title. That was his first of many fights against other members of Murderers Row. And he also outpointed future middleweight champion Billy Seuss. Notice, always future when they fight Burley, future, never current. And he had risen to number 3 in the Ring Magazine welterweight rankings at that time, right? 1938. Now he scored another win over Zivit in 1939. And he lost to another Murderers Row fighter, Holman Williams. Now Zivit fought him 3 times, but once he got that title, that was it. Now the following year, Burley had 11 fights, 1940, scoring 9 wins with 1 draw, right? With Georgie Abrams. And Abrams lost to Tony Zale in the title fight in 1941, right? And Burley lost 1 fight. He got outpointed by the great Jimmy Bivens. Now, Burley won his 7 fights with 17. Burley won all 7 fights in 1941. Then he had a busy 1942 with 17 fights. And the opposition was outrageously tough. He went 3-1 in fights with Holman Williams, lost twice on points to Ezra Charles, and was outpointed by Lloyd Marshall. And notice, most of his fights are against other Murderers Row fighters because nobody else would fight them. All of them were like that. Now, the time between his second win over Holman Williams and his second loss to Ezra Charles was just 6 days. Fought Holman Williams, and 6 days later fought the great Ezra Charles. It was a Murderers Row jamboree in 1943, as Burley beat Jack Trace, had a draw with Coco Kid, and fought a no decision with Holman Williams. They had to do that just to make a living because nobody else would fight him. It was really crazy. Okay? Now, from 1942, the Second World War began to have a growing impact on boxing. Some world titles were frozen, and approximately 460 pro fighters served in the military. Now, the large majority of those serving were white, leading to more black-on-black fights. Now, because, a lot of the military wouldn't take black people, you know what I mean? It's the time we was living in. Or wanted to put them in segregated units, and the black men weren't going for that, so they just didn't join. And the Murderers Row members were fighting for pride only. They couldn't get title shots. Welterweight champion Freddie Cochran won the welterweight title in 1941, beating Fritzy Zivit. And then in 1942, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy, and the title was frozen. Now, Cochran did not defend the title until February 1946, when it was knocked out by Marty Servo. Burley, Williams, Chase, and the Coco Kid all moved up to middleweight in 1944, right? But the champion there, Tony Zale, had also enlisted in the military and did not fight for 4 years, from 1942 to 1946. Okay? He didn't fight for 4 years either. Now, Burley had a very good year in 1944, winning all 9 fights, including a point win over Aaron Wade twice, beating Jack Chase inside the distance and knocking out Archie Moore, and knocked Archie down 4 times, right? It was a decision. Knocked him down 4 times on the way to a decision. Archie Moore was one of the only fighters that wasn't in the Murderers Row that would actually fight the Murderers Row fighters. Archie Moore, right? And there's another guy. I can't think of his name right now. But Burley was winning fights, but the opportunities were slowing down. Fighters only fought Burley if they had to, or because it was a good purse. More and more, Burley had to turn to other Murderers Row members to get fights. He was 6-1 in 1945, including losing to Holman Williams. Now, he only had 5 fights in 1946, winning them all, including against Burt Lytell, right? Then, he had only 2 fights in 1947 and just 1 in 1948. And Burley's desperation for a payday saw him fight and outpoint Uruguayan Pilar Bastidas in Peru on July 22nd, 1958. Okay? Now, Burley's last fight was the one in Peru in 1948, right? And he walked away with a career record of 98 fights, 83 wins, 12 losses, all on points, right? All his losses. He was never knocked out. And he had 2 draws, 1 no decision, and 50 by knockout, 50 knockouts. 5 of his 12 losses were against others Murderers Row fighters, okay? Now, Burley received very little recognition when he retired, but gradually that changed. He was belatedly given the recognition as his great talent deserved. He was inducted into the World Boxing Hall of Fame in 1987 and the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1992. Ring Magazine ranks Burley number 6 on the list of the 80 greatest middleweights of all time. Number 6, okay? And number 4 on the list of all-time great welterweights of all time, okay? Number 6 great in middleweights, number 4 welterweights, okay? Charlie Burley. Just how good Burley was is impossible to judge, okay? The only way that we can, not too much film on him, and the only way we can judge Burley is the praise from his peers. There's very little actual footage available of him. I've seen some. Okay, and like I tell you, he's like a ghost, but it's not much, and it's hard to find. Okay, Coco Kid. Now, him and Charles Burley could do. This is Charles Burley right there, right? Now check this out. That's the Coco Kid. Look like to say those are 2 different people. That's the Coco Kid. That's Charles Burley. 2 different people, man. Incredible, ain't it? I couldn't believe it. Me and Miss Cass was trying to figure out, like, what? Again, Charles Burley. Y'all probably think that's the same person, but it's not, trust me. Coco Kid. 2 different people, man. It's crazy, ain't it? Mike Mazik in the building. What's up, Mike Mazik? Yeah, that's really 2 different people. And they actually fought each other a few times. They were both Murderers Row fighters. What's up, Mike Mazik? We're talking about the Murderers Row fighters. Okay, let's get back into it. Where were we? The Coco Kid, right? No, that's Charles Burley. Only way I tell Charles Burley got a little part in the middle. That's the only way I tell the difference. Charles Burley, Coco Kid. That's crazy, ain't it? Those are really 2 different people. Okay? Really. Now, in some ways, The Coco Kid was the most enigmatic of the Murderers Row Club. Obviously, Coco Kid was an assumed ring name, which he said he adopted to honor the Cuban Kid Chocolate, okay, who was the world junior lightweight champion in 1931, Kid Chocolate. This was Coco Kid's idol. Now he fought under other names before becoming Coco Kid, and he changed his name and background at various times, right? Now, define on it. Yeah, Herbert Arroyo. Herbert Hardwick Arroyo, right, was his real name. As defined on it, had put it in the chat before. Hardwick was the middle. He had Herbert Louis Hardwick Arroyo, and he had been born in Mayaguez, Puerto Rico on May 2nd, 1914. Now, his father was a sailor in the United States Navy, right? And in 1918, was part of the USS Cyclops crew, which sailed out of the Bahamas on March 6, 1918, and was never seen again. What was that place they had down there where ships and stuff disappeared? Yeah, a few of them disappeared and there was never seen, never found, right? Now, despite all the efforts to discover what had happened to the Cyclops, to that Navy ship, no trace was ever found. Never. Not on the bottom of the ocean, nowhere. I can't really think of the name of that area down there, but a lot of places always disappeared down there. Ships and stuff, yeah. Jarrell Hattie putting some color in here for us. Appreciate you, Jarrell Hattie. 1000%. You know, we got to celebrate the color. I love color. There you go. Yeah, but Coco Kid's father, his face disappeared down there. Yeah, appreciate you, Jarrell. Super chat, Cash App rolling across. Like and subscribe, or just be in the chat list. Fine with me. Appreciate all of everybody. Yeah, Coco Kid's father was in the Navy. His ship disappeared in that area down there. No trace was ever found of it. Never. Okay. Now, Coco, his mother, and sisters were destitute, and a year of struggles proved too much for Coco's mother, and she died when he was 12 years old, after his father disappeared. Now, Coco was quoted in a newspaper in 1940 that he turned pro at the age of 14 as a featherweight without ever having a fight as an amateur, but his official record stands in Atlanta on May starts in Atlanta on May 13th, 1929, just 11 days after his 15th birthday, okay? So officially, he said he had a fight at 14, but officially he was 15, okay? Now he quickly advanced to fighting 10-round fights, beating former champions Louis Kid Kaplan and Johnny Jadek, while still only 18 years old and suffering some losses along the way against more experienced fighters. In 1936, the Kid won the recently reintroduced colored welterweight title by stopping young Peter Jackson, and twice outpointed fellow members of the Murderers Row group, Holman Williams. Yeah, Holman Williams. Yeah, they all always had to fight each other. You'll see that's a recurring thing as we go through. Now, the Kid was floored and outpointed by Charlie Burley in 1938. But by 1940, he had risen to number 1 in the ring welterweight rankings. Even though he was number 1 at the start of the year, the welterweight title was held by fellow African-American Henry Armstrong. Now listen to this. Listen to this. Coco Kid was ranked number 1. And at the start of the year, in the welterweight division, start of the year, the title was held by fellow African-American Henry Armstrong. It was lower-ranked white fighters who got the title shots. Damn, Homicide Hank. In fact, listen to this. In fact, Henry Armstrong never fought a black fighter in any of his title fights across 3 weight divisions. Never fought a black fighter in any title fight. Henry Armstrong. Yeah, I'm not calling him Homicide Hank no more. I'm calling him Household Hank. Household Hank. Household Hank never fought a black fighter across 3 weight classes. No wonder he kept all those titles so long. He was fighting lower level fighters. Now, various offers were made to Armstrong to defend against the Coco Kid, but his management ignored them all. And don't blame it on the management. Henry Armstrong, you could fire your man. If you wanted to fight, you could make it. Floyd Patterson did it. Cus D'Amato, Floyd's manager, would not make the Sonny Liston fight for years, so Cus fired Sonny. Floyd Patterson fired Cus D'Amato and made this Sonny Liston fight. So if Henry Armstrong would have wanted the Coco Kid fight, he could have had it. He was scared. Okay? He didn't want to lose his title. Now, the National Boxing Association stated that Armstrong would have to face the winner of Coco Kid and Phil Furr, or they would withdraw recognition. Now, check this out. In July 1940, Coco Kid outpointed Furr. And in September, Armstrong fought Furr. And the NBA still didn't strip him. They did a brother bad back then, man. The NBA said that Armstrong had to fight the winner between Coco Kid and Furr. Coco Kid beats Furr, and Armstrong fights Furr, and still didn't get stripped. Wow. Yeah, so the Coco Kid never did get his title shot. Never got it. Okay, well, let's go on. But, you know, that's the period we were living in, though, so hey. But anyway, Mike Grimm been in the building. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, Henry Armstrong fought Furr, and Coco Kid won the fight. And the NBA still didn't strip him. Okay? And of course, Furr was white, right? Y'all probably already knew that. In October 1940, Fritzy Zivik beat Armstrong for the welterweight title. And Zivik's manager flat out made it clear Zivik would not be defending at any time against the Coco Kid, right? And they said any chance of Coco Kid getting a title shot once Zivik got the title was gone. Okay. He did fight for a version of the welterweight title, but that was only recognized in Maryland. You know, each state had their little versions of it. He won the Maryland welterweight title, right? And he lost a split decision to Izzy Genazzo. He then had a spell where he went 25-2-1 in 28 fights. He was still rated in the top 10 middleweights, despite losing to Archie Moore and Murderers Row member Charles Burley. So he went on and moved up to middleweight because they made it clear they wasn't. Fritzy Zivik and his management made it clear they wasn't going to fight him, so he moved to middleweight. But he wasn't going to get a title fight there either, right? He lost to Archie Moore, Charles Burley, Holman Williams, Jack Chase, and Burt Lytell, other Murderers Row fighters. Archie Moore was one of the people that was willing to fight him. Now, Harry Greb would have fought him, but Harry Greb was in another era. Harry Greb didn't fight anybody. Harry Greb fought 45 times in 1 year against everybody. But Harry Greb was in a different era before them. He would have fought all of them, no doubt about it. Now, Coco Kid was also reported to have dropped Sugar Ray Robinson in sparring. Okay? Now, Coco had 250 fights in a 14-year career. Okay? 250 fights during his 14-year career. And he had enlisted in the Navy in 1942, but he was honorably discharged after just a few months. Now, it was later revealed that he was discharged early because he was suffering from pugilistic dementia. Yet, After leaving the Navy, he fought for another 6 years and 50 more fights. Already diagnosed with pugilistic dementia, or the dementia pugilistica, right, by the military. And they put him out. They let him go. Because of that, he went back to fighting for another 6 years, already had that. And he was later reported to be living homeless on the streets after he retired. And he died in a Veterans Administration hospital in Chicago on December 27, 1966, at age 52. 178 wins, 58 losses, 11 draws, 48 knockouts for the Coco Kid. Murderous Road fighter, Coco Kid. Okay. Eddie Booker is next. There's Eddie Booker right there. I think Eddie Booker is next. No, Holman Williams is next. That's Holman Williams. Holman Williams. Now, although they fought each other 13 times, Holman Williams and Coco Kid had very different starts to their time in boxing. Holman was born in Pensacola, Florida on January 30th, 1915. But his family moved to Detroit when he was just 2 years old. He was an outstanding amateur winning the Detroit Golden Gloves tournament. Yeah, you win Detroit Golden Gloves, you got to be nice. Detroit or New York or Chicago. And he won the U.S. National AAU championships. Okay, well, you got to be nice to win any Golden Glove. You didn't beat a lot of good amateur fighters, right? But particularly Detroit, Chicago, and New York. Back then, anyway. And he also competed unsuccessfully at the Olympic trials for the U.S. team for the 1932 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. He didn't make the team. And then he turned pro in August 1932 at the age of 17, right? Holman Williams. Okay. Now, Holman made an inauspicious start, going 5-2 in his first 7 fights. But then he was unbeaten in his next 27 fights before losing the first of his 13 fights against Coco Kid in 1936. Remember, they had 13 fights. He lost the first one. But he rebounded to lose only one of his next 30 fights, including a win over Charlie Burley, another Murderous Road fighter, when Williams climbed off the floor 3 times in the 4th round to win the decision over Burley, right? But over their 7-fight series, both had 3 wins with 1 fight ending in a no decision, right? And his run of wins saw him ranked as the number 2 welterweight in the world, but there was no sign of a title shot. All these guys were top 10 fighters. He was number 2. Coco Kid was number 1 ranked. Charlie Burley is number 8 all time at middleweight, number 4 in welterweight. Never got a title shot. Colored heavyweight title. So he couldn't get a shot at welterweight, so Holman Williams moved up to middleweight. And again, put himself in the title picture with a 26-1-1 run starting out at middleweight, including wins over Coco Kid before losing to Burley in February 1942. But he still didn't get a title shot. He maintained his high level of activity against top quality opposition, having 20 fights in 1944. Now, the top fighters would fight him, but not in title fights. Understand? Not in title fights. Okay? So he maintained his activity against top quality opposition, having 20 fights in 1944, all of which were scheduled for 10 rounds or more, and all went the distance. Now, they say timing is everything. And between 1939 and 1945, both the National Boxing Association and the New York State Athletic Commission saw their respective versions of the title battled around between Al Hostak and Tony Zale for the NBA version, and Seferino Garcia, Ken Oberlin, and Billy Seuss for the New York State Athletic Commission version, while Williams was ignored. Okay, Williams was ignored. Now, what complicated the situation was that both versions of the title were frozen from 1942 onwards due to World War II. and fighters such as Seuss and Zale joined the U.S. military. And Williams continued to be active and had 16 fights in 1945, going 13 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, with wins over club members Coco Kidd, Charles Burley, and Burt Lytell, and outported Archie Moore with the old Mongoose winning the rematch. Now, Archie Moore would fight them, and Archie Moore was ducked in his own right, because remember, Archie Moore went 16 years before he got a title shot. So I don't know why it wasn't 9 Murderers Row fighters, because Archie Moore fit right in there with him. Archie Moore was 23 when he turned pro. He was 39 when he got his first title shot. So he was also ducked. That's why he fought them so much, because I guess he could relate, you know? Yeah. So, the old Mongoose won the rematch. He beat the old Mongoose in the first fight. Now, Tony Zale was active for 3 years was inactive for 3 years due to his time in the military. That was the champion. And when he returned, his focus was on unifying the NBA and New York State Athletic Commission titles, which he accomplished by knocking out Rocky Graziano in September 1946. But he wouldn't give Homer Williams a shot. Now, with Graziano stopping Zale for the title the following year, 1947, any slim chance Williams had of a title shot was gone then, because Graziano, his team made clear they wasn't going to fight Homer Williams. He thought he had a shot when Zale had it, but when Graziano took it from Zale, any chance of Homer Williams getting a title shot was gone. Okay, so that was it. So Williams was just 31 at the end of 1945, but he competed in his 15th year as a pro and already had 167 fights on his record. And the wear and tear from that finally began to show in 1946 as he lost a decision against Burt Lytell, right? Marcel Cerdan and Jake LaMotta. Now look at that. All of a sudden, Marcel Cerdan and Jake LaMotta want to fight him after 15 years and 167 fights. What happened to the other 15 years? Neither one of them would fight him. But after the wear and tear started to show, 15 years, 167 fights, here comes the French fighter Marcel Cerdan. Here comes Jake LaMotta willing to fight him then. Crazy. Now, Williams only won 3 of his last 11 fights, okay? In 1947 and 1948. And he lost his final fight in June 1948 to Gentle Daniel, a fighter with just 16 pro fights. Gentle Daniel was 11-2 with 3 draws. Now, Williams helped train young fighters at a gym for a while, but was struggling with his health, and he eventually took a job as a janitor at a club. He was homeless and slept at the club, but the club burned down in 1967, and Williams died in the fire at the age of 52. Now, Williams only lost inside the distance in his career 3 times in 189 fights. Once against Archie Moore, once against Charlie Burley, and once against Joe Basora due to a bad cut, right? He had 20 stoppages in his first 40 fights, but only 16 in the next 106. Brittle hands forced step change to his approach, but Williams was one of the most gifted boxers to ever pull on a pair of boxing gloves, okay? Hall of Fame trainer Eddie Futch said about Williams. I told y'all this before. Hall of Fame trainer Eddie Futch worked with Williams at the Brewster Gym, and he said, "I'd rather watch Homer Williams shadow box than watch most other fighters in an actual fight." Fellow Murderers Row boxer Lloyd Marshall said about Williams, "Best technical boxer I ever saw. As a matter of fact, best boxer I ever saw." Williams was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2008. Finished his career 146 wins, 31 losses, 11 draws, 1 no contest, 36 knockouts. He had 20 in his first 40 fights, and then like 16 in the next 100, right? 106 fights. Holman Williams. Okay. Now, Burley, Coco Kidd, and Williams were the three highest profile fighters in Murderous Row, but Eddie Booker, Jack Chase, Lord Marshall, Burt Lytell, and Aaron Wade were all outstanding fighters. Now, although inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame and the World Boxing Hall of Fame, Hilton Edward Eddie Booker had the worst luck of all the members. This is Eddie Booker. Yeah, this is Eddie Booker. He had the worst luck of all the members of the Murderous Row. Called himself Black Dynamite. Black Dynamite's career was cut short after just 9 years, right? And that happened when he had, when he had to retire with severe eye problems, attributed to an illegally doctored glove, okay? An illegally doctored glove led to his eye problems. The Angelo Margarito type from back in that era. Man. There's Eddie Booker. Okay. Or did I go backwards? Yeah, that's Eddie Booker. Okay. Now, after a successful time as an amateur, Booker had his first professional fight in January 1935 at age 17. Okay. And he went 39 wins, no losses, 4 draws in his first 43 fights before suffering consecutive losses against Fritzy Zivik and Coco Kid in 1939. Now remember, Fritzy Zivik would fight these guys before he became champion. So he didn't become champion until like the mid-40s. So in 1939, Fritzy Zivik was willing to fight Murderous Row fighters. As a matter of fact, he fought a couple of them. But once he got that title, that was it. Now, Booker had only one fight in 1940 as he was sidelined with hand injuries. He then won 16 and had 2 draws in his next 18 fights, with the draws coming against, guess who? Archie Moore and Shorty Hogue, who had 43 wins in 46 fights. Now, Booker fought Hogue 4 times, going 2 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, and also knocked Hogue out. Hogue's older brother out, Big Bob Hogue. In 1942, he outpointed Lord Marshall. Then had a draw against Archie Moore again before losing to Jack Chase in January 1943. They all fought each other numerous times. Okay. Now, Booker had eye surgery after the Chase fight and did not fight for 8 months. Okay. Although it was suspected that his eye problems predated the Chase fight, and he had been fighting with impaired vision for a few years, right? Now, when he returned in August of 1943, he stopped Harry Matthews, right? And Matthews with 51 wins, no losses at that time, right? And then Booker lost on points to Holman Williams in November 1943. And his career would cruelly end in 1944 at the age of 26. In January 1944, he stopped Archie Moore in 8 rounds, flooring Moore 4 times. Just 2 months later, after outpointing Holman Williams, he could no longer conceal his deteriorating eyesight, right? And he was forced to retire, right? Yeah, he was forced to retire. His record when he retired was 68 wins, 5 losses, and 8 draws, 33 knockouts. 3 of his 8 losses came against fellow Murderous Row members, Coco Kid, Jack Chase, and Holman Williams. After dealing with severe eye issues during his boxing career, Booker went blind later in his life. He died in January 1975 at age 57. Okay? The great Eddie Booker. Next is Lloyd Marshall. Lloyd Marshall. Man, it's not no 321. This clock got to be wrong. Gee, Chris, where time go to? Lloyd Marshall. My goodness. 321, is that right? Yeah. Okay, we're going to get it in though. Now, Jack Chase and Lloyd Marshall, while not having as high a profile as Burley, Coco Kid, Homer Williams, and Booker, were all denied title shots that they clearly had earned. Now, Lord Marshall fought from 1936 to 1951 and compiled a 100-fight record of 71 wins, 25 losses, and 4 draws. He beat Charlie Burley, Ezra Charles, Jake LaMotta, Joey Maxim, future middleweight champion Ken Oberlin, former champion Teddy DeRosa, 2-division champion Lou Brouillard, light heavyweight champion Anton Christofortis, and England's Freddie Mills. Later in his career, Marshall traveled to Britain, where he lost twice to Don Cockell and outpointed Jimmy Farr. Then he retired in July 1951. Lloyd Marshall. Okay, these are some of the lower profile members here, but still didn't get the title shots they deserved. Jack Chase. Jack Chase, another Dodge Murdersville fighter. Jack Chase, okay? Now, under the name of Young Joe Louis at the start of his career, but then as Jack Chase from 1942 on. Now, he had an 81-24 record, 81 wins, 24 losses, 12 draws, right? 2 no decisions. And at one time was ranked as the number 2 ranked middleweight in the world, but again, was never given the chance to fight for a title. Now, he beat Eddie Booker, Harry Matthews, Archie Moore, Lloyd Marshall, Aaron Wade, and he also fought to a draw with Archie Moore. He was in and out of the juvenile system from the age of 12 years, age 12. And there's a gap in his career from 1937 to 1941 when he spent time in jail, okay? And he was arrested for shooting and wounding fellow Murderers Row member Aaron Wade. They had his last fight in 1948, but they both said it was an accident. But boxing had helped him change his life because he was wild when he was younger. And he worked for a nonprofit organization to help youth, including those recently released from prison. And Chase even appeared in a couple of Hollywood movies. He died from heart problems in 1972. Jack Chase. Winding down. Burt Lytell. Burt Lytell. There's Burt Lytell. Now, Burt Lytell turned pro later than the others in the Murderers Row group. He had his first fight in 1944, but he went on to have a record of 71 wins, 23 losses, 7 draws, 1 no decision. Now, he sometimes used the nickname of Chocolate Kid, and being black and a southpaw, fought with 2 strikes against him. But in 1948, he was ranked number 1 middleweight in the Ring Magazine rankings, and with 6 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw in fights with fellow Murderers Row club members. Yeah, but he still never got a title shot. And finally, Aaron Wade. This is the final member of Murderers Row. He's the final member. Aaron Wade. Okay. Now, Aaron Wade was known as Little Tiger. He was born in Trenton, Tennessee. Okay. Now, he reportedly had over 600 amateur fights. However, the exact number is unknown. They had a brother named Bruce Wade who was also a pro fighter. And Bruce was known as Big Tiger. You know, Aaron was Little Tiger. His brother Bruce was Big Tiger. Okay? Like Little Junior, Big Junior, Little Tiger, Big Tiger. Right? So, now Aaron went on to have a far greater career than his older brother did, though. Now, Aaron was a short fighter. He stood at 5'5.5". And Aaron started his career at welterweight, but also competed in the middleweight and light heavyweight divisions. Now, since Aaron was recognized as one of the 8 members of the Black Murderers Row fighters, he didn't get to compete for a title shot, right? He had earned, and he was feared and avoided by many of the big names who competed during the era he fought in. Now, due to being avoided, he had many fights with other Murderers Row members. Here's how he fared within the group. Okay, against Charles Burley, he won none, lost 3. Against Jack Chase, he won none, lost 2 at 1 draw. Against Homer Williams, he won none, lost 2. Coco Kidd won 1, lost 0. Burt Lytell 1-0. Never fought Lloyd Marshall or Eddie Booker. Overall, Kevin Wade won 2, lost 7 at 1 draw. He didn't do too good against fellow Murderers member. Now, Wade also beat great fighters such as Bobby Pacho, and you know the other one. Of course, Archie Moore. Archie Moore should have been a Murderers member. Now, I got couple other avoided fighters. Intimidating or avoided fighters. Let's talk about this. Since we talked about avoided fighters today. Don't miss tomorrow. We're going to talk about the greatest fighters not in the Hall of Fame tomorrow. You're going to be surprised by some of them. I shouldn't even told y'all. I should have let y'all find out Esteban de Jesus tomorrow. Just to see how surprised y'all was. Man. Esteban de Jesus not in the Hall of Fame. That is crazy. That is absolutely utter nonsense. Esteban de Jesus not in the Hall of Fame. Top 12 all-time most intimidating boxers. And some of these guys were avoided too. Okay. That's a good one to put up there, ain't it? What y'all think? Is that a good one? The Big Bear. The intimidation comes in many different forms. Excuse me. Aggressive body language, rippling muscles, obnoxious trash talk, a preceding reputation, or the cold stare that sends tremors down the backbone, like that one there on the screen. Whichever way it's manifested, the objective remains the same: to force a crack in an opponent's psyche, through which fear can enter. These are the masters of menace, who consistently so demoralize foes that their opponents either lost all confidence before the opening bell or avoided fighting them all together. Number 1, Elmer Ray. Elmer Ray. Come on, man. Excuse me for one moment, please. I don't know what I just did. All I know is I just did something. Can anybody hear me? I don't know if I'm back or not. I knocked the whole damn laptop over. Gee, Christmas, man. There we go. Can y'all hear me? I knocked the whole laptop over. Gee, Christmas. It wasn't the Wi-Fi that time, it was me. I literally knocked the whole laptop over into the floor. Damn. See that? Well, I got to get back to my office, man. Elmer Ray. Okay, we talked about some of the most intimidating fighters of all time. Where's the chat phone at, man? Shit. Oh, there it is. Damn. Jumped our way into the next one. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Oh my God, I'm going to do it again. What's going on, man? Man. I'll be right with y'all. I don't even know if anybody can hear me or not. I guess. Oh, cool. Thank you, Define Arnie. Yeah, I knocked the entire laptop in the floor. Damn. Okay, let's get back to it. I was talking about some intimidating fighters. Okay? Some intimidating fighters. Since we talked about avoided, some of these are some intimidating and avoided fighters. Elmer Ray is first. Okay, here we go. Elmer Ray. Now, the deadly heavyweight puncher, nicknamed Kid Violent, was too dangerous for his own good, as he was avoided by a slew of top names due to his extraordinary punching power. And as a fact, he was also known for being a battle-scarred veteran of the brutal contest they call battle royals, plus his penchant for alligator wrestling, plus his scoring some 70 knockouts against human foes. And he had one of the most ferocious battlers and fearsome, ferocious battlers in heavyweight history. You know, we're still talking about some intimidating, avoided other fighters other than Murderous Row right now. How about King Carlos Monzon? King Carlos Monzon. Yeah, they stayed away from King Carlos in the early 70s. Yeah, King Carlos. Let's talk about the king. A true macho man, this Argentinian power puncher had the attitude of both a genuine street tough and a champion of unshakable confidence, not to mention a cannon of a right hand. As Mike Tyson himself put it, I always loved Carlos Monzon. He was a tough guy for real, a guy from the streets. He didn't talk much, he didn't need to. The ring belonged to him. Go way back. Stanley Ketchel, the Michigan Wolverine, Stanley Ketchel. Let's talk about some other avoided fighters other than Murderous Row. Stanley Ketchel. Now, not for nothing did they call him the Michigan Assassin. The ruthless Ketchel, one of the all-time most deadly punches, brought to the ring a cold-eyed glare, a contemptuous sneer, and one of the hardest right hands in boxing history. And when faced with the total package, his opponents often felt more than a bit weak in the knees. All right. Next. The Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. The fighter they called Hands of Stone gave off such an unmistakable aura of ferocity and violence that it unnerved even the most talented of boxers. Sporting a sneer of contempt and angry black eyes that seemed capable of boring holes into people's heads, here appeared a savage maniac bent on destruction. Now listen to this. Listen to this. Heavyweight legend Joe Frazier was once asked if Duran reminded him of anyone. Yes, said Smoking Joe. He reminds me of Charles Manson. The Hands of Stone. Okay, next, talking about some other avoided and intimidating fighters. Terry McGovern. We go back again. Terry McGovern. A two-time world champ, Terrible Terry, boasted both devastating punching power and a ferocious whirlwind attack, the combination of which left one adversary after another in both the bantamweight and featherweight divisions, groveling in the resin dust. Such was McGovern's reputation that many of his 80 professional opponents were clearly beaten before the opening bell had even rung. Okay, Terry McGovern. Talking about some intimidating avoided fighters. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Marvelous Marvin. That was his real name. Back in the 80s, some of the announcers and commentators wouldn't call him Marvelous for some reason, so he changed his name to Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Now you gotta call me that. That's my government name, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. That's what he did to make him call him that. They called Sugar Ray Leonard. They called Hearns the Hitman. They called Duran the Hands of Stone. Why they didn't call him Marvelous Marvin Hagler? So he changed his name to that. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. With his shaved head, perpetual snarl, granite chin, and deadly fists, Hagler struck fear in the hearts of men, making it that much easier for him to run them out of the ring. That is, when he got the chance to fight them. For years, top contenders and champions in the middleweight division did everything they could to avoid facing Marvelous Marvin. Joe Frazier told him, "You're black, you're a southpaw, and you're good." 3 strikes. Okay, Jack Dempsey, the Manasseh Mauler. Jack Dempsey. Did I say he was the Manasseh Mauler? Yeah, Jack Dempsey. There he is. Okay, Jack Dempsey. The reputations of the erstwhile Kid Blackie for ring ferocity preceded him and proceeded to leave many of his opponents with a sudden urge to pack up and go home. Bolstered by his scowling visage, his intimidating reputation no doubt contributed to the Manasseh Mauler racking up an astonishing 60 first-round knockouts, including exhibition fights, over the course of his pro career. 60 first-round knockouts. That got to be the record. Okay, next. Big George Foreman. Big George Foreman. Big and Bad Foreman learned from Sonny Liston that all he had to do was not talk too much, not change your facial expression, stare your opponent down, and you'd gain the psychological upper hand. Of course, it also helps if you happen to be 6'3", about 250. One of the hardest punches in boxing history, and have a long line of supine and comatose heavyweights stretching behind you. Yeah, that helped. Just a little. The Brown Bomber, Joe Louis. We talking about some intimidating guys now. Intimidating or avoided fighters. The Brown Bomber, Joe Louis. The Brown Bomber didn't have to work too hard at intimidating people. His record and reputation accomplished that all by themselves. One of the most fearsome punchers in boxing history, Louis left a path of destruction that unnerved all the heavyweights of his day. Add his cold, distant stare and unflappable demeanor, and many of Joe's opponents were searching for the exits before the first round got underway. Or, as renowned trainer Ray Arcel, who backed numerous Louis opponents, put it, if you're training to fight Joe Louis and you can't sleep and that's on your mind, it takes everything away from you. I remember I walked Johnny Paycheck into the ring against Joe, and his knees were actually trembling. Ray Garcelle said the man's knees were actually trembling when he was making his ring walk to face the Brown Bomber. Wow. And Ray wouldn't lie. You know, Ray Garcelle trained Benny Leonard in the 1920s and Roberto Duran in the 1970s. And every decade in between the 20s and 70s, he had a world champion in him. Incredible. Incredible. Sonny Liston. At least one world champion in every decade from 1920 to 1980. Some decades numerous. Okay. Wait a minute. Joe Louis, I don't think I showed Joe Louis, but we just talked about Joe Louis. The Big Bear. Sonny Liston. The Big Bear. Now, an ex-con and a rumored leg breaker for the mob, not to mention an associate of hardcore gangsters, Frankie Carbo and Blinky Palermo, Liston had ring intimidation down to a science. In addition to his reputation and underworld connections, Liston sported a massive physique, huge, deadly fists, and perhaps the best poker face in boxing history. After laying waste to the heavyweight division and twice knocking out Floyd Patterson in the first round, he appeared unbeatable. But then along came this big mouth youngster named Cassius Clay. And the mystique of the Big Bear went out the window. Okay, but he was still a bad man. They say his fist was 15 inches around. Just imagine a ruler, and if you could just fold that around, that's how big Sonny Liston's fist was. 15. A ruler plus 3 more inches, that is. A 12-inch ruler plus 3 more inches. Now imagine just making that a circle out of that ruler. Add 3 more inches. Leave a 3-inch gap in the middle when you fold it around. That's how big Sonny Liston's with fists were. Okay, that's how big his the diameter of his fists were, 15 inches, man. Okay, Sam Langford. I can't remember his nickname. The only one I remember is the Boston Tar Baby, but Ant McQueen in the building, but that's not a good one. The Boston Terrier, that was one of them too. The Boston Terrier. I like that one better. Okay. What's up, Ant McQueen? Let me see. Ant says, Big George, I dropped my book. I dropped the laptop. I dropped everything in the floor. I can't even find my notebook. Okay, Ant McQueen. Oh, there it is. Man. Okay. I'm out here in this little makeshift office, man. Damn. Because if I go back there, my Wi-Fi goes up. Thomas Hill said I'm too far from the main box or something. I don't know. But we didn't go out. But let me be quiet. Yet. Today. Okay, salute, Ant. Okay, Sam Langford. Right, we talking about some intimidating avoided fighters. Sam Langford, the Boston Terrier. Now, Sam, pound for pound, the Boston Bone Crusher, too. Pound for pound, the Boston Bone Crusher. Yeah, I like that one. May well be the hardest puncher to ever step through the ropes. And there was certainly no secret that his devastating power, toughness, and skill made him virtually unbeatable for fighters close to his natural fighting weight. So intimidating was this former lightweight that he had to climb all the way up to the heavyweight class to find men with the guts to face him. And even then, seasoned warriors such as Joe Jeanette, Kid Norfolk, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, Harry Wills, and Ed Gunboat Smith marveled at his ring abilities and raw power. Oh, I thought they were going to say Gunboat dropped. No, Gunboat didn't duck nobody. I thought they were going to say Gunboat ducked. But Gunboat marveled at his raw ring abilities and raw power. Oh, okay. Don't put that rap on Gunboat. Now, when Langford was the world champ, Jack Johnson shamelessly ducked him, as did Jack Dempsey, who would later confess, I was afraid of Sam Langford. But I found out last week, it wasn't exactly the fighters. You know, the government was against mixed race fights, and the government did a lot of the blocking. It wasn't exactly Jack Dempsey and Jack Johnson, because Tex Rickard, the big promoter from that era, admitted that he had orders from the government not to make any mixed race fights, especially at heavyweight. So yeah, I wouldn't put that rap on Jack Johnson and Jack Dempsey at duck. Jack Dempsey wouldn't duck nobody. This man was a teenager and walked into a bar and said he beat anybody's ass in there just for eating money. Anybody in there, he fight them. So that is not a person that's gonna duck somebody, okay? No, that just don't give me the image of somebody that's gonna duck somebody. This little teenage kid walking into a bar challenging anybody in there just to get some money for something to eat. Nah, not Jack Dempsey. Yeah, it was the government was blocking fights because it a lot to do with the way Jack Johnson and James J. Jeffries ended. They had race riots, people died. So they was afraid another black fighter would come along and win, especially as popular as Jack Dempsey was. They didn't think the result of that would be good, you know. And so plus, and the way Jack Johnson carried it, they really wasn't interested in another black world champion anytime soon. After Jack Johnson lost in 1915, a black fighter didn't get another shot at the heavyweight title for 22 years until Joe Louis in 1937. So they were serious about that. No more black champions, but you know, Joe Louis finally did. Joe was so good, those promoters was like, I'm sorry, Mr. Government. We are making this fight. We cannot hold this kid back. You know, and the rest is history. But finally, number one is okay, this is the last one. Was Sam Lightfoot the last one? No. Oh, Mike Tyson. Okay, yeah, one more. Mike Tyson. Yeah, I gotta run an errand at 4 today. That's why I didn't drop the link. We'll get to going so good. We'll be here till 6 o'clock, chopping it up, man. Like we always do. Always. If you gotta go at 4, then I'll be here till 5 with y'all. We get into some good talks up here, though, man. When you get knowledgeable boxing minds around like that, you can't help but, you know. And there's Thomas Hill. What's up, Thomas Hill? You get knowledgeable boxing minds like B in here, you can't help but to get good talks. Oh, Lord, now I can't find my ink pen. I just wrote Ant down. I just had it. Now I can't find it. Gee, me Christmas. Okay, Thomas Hill. Thomas Hill always in here. I remember that. Okay, Mike Tyson, number one. We talking about intimidated. They didn't avoid Mike because Mike was the cash cow. Everybody ran toward him, you know. Mike was the cash cow, so he wasn't avoided. That was the big money fight there. That was, you know, back in the 80s, that was everybody's biggest payday. So no. But he was intimidating. He was intimidating. Mike Tyson. Now, Mike's talent for terrifying his opponents is legendary. With his muscular physique, malevolent glare, and a ring costume of nothing but black trunks and shoes, he looked the part of a homicidal henchman from some dark lair of the underworld. I did hear Mike say one time he had on those little footsie things. He wanted it to appear like he didn't have socks, but he had those little things that you couldn't see down, covering his feet. Yeah, he did have socks on, but it looked intimidating, like he didn't, and just had that little hole cut in the towel draped over his head. They said Michael Spinks wanted to bolt out of there. And Michael Spinks, I told y'all the other week, Michael Spinks said Eddie Futch had a pretty good game plan for Michael Spinks that I think might have worked. But once Mike Tyson came down there and got in the ring, Spinks forgot what the game plan was and went out there and slugged it out with Mike. Oh, yeah, it was, he had a decent jab. He had a nice, significant reach advantage and keep Mike at bay with that. And when Mike tried to rush in, Spinks had a very good right hand, dropped that Spinks jinx on him. That might have worked. And the plan was to get Mike in the later rounds, right? Gas him out. But Mike did none of the game plan. I don't even know if he threw a jab. He just, 91 seconds, it was over. But then I think that what might have worked for Mike. Buster did it a few years later. you know. Buster had a little bit more power than Mike too, though, so I don't know. But I think it might have worked. But anyway, Mike Tyson, yeah. He had that costume of nothing but black trunks and shoes and the towel. Yeah, he looked the part of some homicidal henchman from some dark layer of the underworld. Now, in short, for most of his career, Mike was incredibly intimidating. Proof? His 91-second demolition of a terrified Michael Spinks. Frank Bruno walking to the ring as if it were the gallows. Or consider that more than half of Tyson's 44 career knockouts took place in the opening round. So Frank was coming to the ring like they was taking him to the gallows. Wow. Now, few fighters in boxing history depended so much on sheer intimidation for ring success. And even after defeats to James Buster Douglas and Evander Holyfield, Tyson's reputation and skill at unnerving his adversaries helped him to rack up victories. Yeah, but that intimidation was gone then after Buster. Yeah, Buster took that away from him. Yeah. And Holyfield beat him up. Remember? Holyfield beat Mike up, man. Why does this thing keep going out? The screen. I did something when I dropped it. Man. Okay, we got Just Do Boxing next. Tomorrow, don't forget, we're going to talk about some of the great fighters that didn't make the Hall of Fame. And we're definitely going to get some link time tomorrow because we got to talk about that. Esteban de Jesus, man. Not in the Hall of Fame. It's a couple others. Big names, you know? There's no reason why they aren't in there. None. Esteban de Jesus beat the Hands of Stone when he was the Hands of Stone, coming through those 70s. You talk about intimidation. Roberto would, after the ring announcer announced that, when he beat somebody and they make it official, the ring announcer make it official, Roberto would grab the family jewels on you. Mm-hmm. Roberto didn't care, right? Duran. Yeah, man. I seen him do it. Yep. And Esteban de Jesus beat that monster in the 70s, man. And was a great champion in his own right. I was shocked when I saw that Esteban de Jesus wasn't in the Hall of Fame. And we're going to have a few more tomorrow, a few more surprises. I just looked at it this week and I was like, what? At least 4 or 5 of them. I got like 25 of them. At least 5, I was like, no way. No way. He ain't in there. But then I Googled it and they weren't. They weren't in there. No. It's crazy. I got to be somewhere at 4:18. And I'm going to do it because I'm getting ready to get out of here. If I drop that link, I'll be still in here at 4:18 because we get to going good, man, and talking boxing, and it'll be 5:18. We're going to get some link time tomorrow, though. Okay, I'm trying to see what Just Do is doing today. Just Do Boxing. There we go. Okay, Just Do is talking about Turki Ali. I had it. Turki Ali Sheik new partnership, right? Be interested to see what that's about. Devin Haney versus Teofimo Lopez or Boots. Wow. Has Haney surpassed Floyd? Coming up next on Just Do Boxing. Wow, okay, that's going to be interesting. I'm going to have my earpiece in. Okay. Thomas Hill, Ant McQueen, Mike Mazik, Jarrell Hattie, Kensaw Love 1, Mike Rim, BVO Sports TV, Define Arnie 1, Ace, Azim Shabazz, Crush the Legend, Al Booger. Miss Cass. Appreciate everybody for stopping through today. Don't miss tomorrow. We're going to have that not in the Hall of Fame show, and there's going to be some surprises on there, led by the great Esteban de Jesus. I'm still mad about that. But everybody have a great afternoon. I'll be over there, Just Do. I'm going to be listening. at Just Do Boxing coming up in a couple minutes. But y'all have a great afternoon. I appreciate y'all 1,000%. And you know, if it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's The Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Salute, Red Fox. Where's Lamont at?